You can now advertise on Parliament Television and Parliament Radio. For more information, call 0977 854102 or 0977 536487. Parliament Television, bringing Parliament closer to you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on Parliament Television and Parliament Radio. Your favorite program is back on your screens, and this is the SDG and You, both television and radio program. Today, we'll look at SDG number 7, which is affordable and clean energy. My name is Posen Tindovi. This is a program that comes every Wednesday at 08:35 hours, and we look at all the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So far, we've looked at 5. Last week, we were looking at a very interesting SDG, which is SDG 6, which is clean water. And on today's program, I do have a very, very interesting panelist. But before we do that, did you know that over 1 billion people globally do not have access to clean energy? Like I mentioned, I do have a very interesting panelist, and I do have the Honorable Minister of Energy, and this is Honorable Engineer Peter Kapala. Thank you so much, Honorable, for sparing time to be with us on this very important program. How's the ministry doing?
All right, I think challenges here and there. There are no dull moments at the ministry, really, as you will have noticed.
All right. I also do have a representative from the coming from an agency. Caro Zulu with us on this platform. How are you doing this morning?
We're doing well. If government says so, it means we are also well.
Okay. I do have a representative from a rural constituency. It's a very strategic constituency because it's both urban and rural constituency. And we're talking about Kafue constituency, and this is Mrs. Miriam Chinyamachonia. Thank you so much for waking up early and be part and parcel of this interesting program.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
All right, so like I mentioned earlier on, we're looking at Sustainable Development Goal number 7. And earlier on, I did talk about very, very alarming figures where people do not have access to energy. And later on, I shall be reading your text messages. If you feel like being part and parcel of this program, the number that we'll be using for text messages is 0978 772801. Better still, we can also go to our Facebook page, the National Assembly of Zambia. Like that Facebook page and let us know where you're watching us from. My sign language interpreter for today is Chola Kaoma. It's also worth mentioning that this program is in partnership with the United Nations. Give us a brief explanation about SDG 7, which is affordable and clean energy. What is it all about?
Thank you very much. And really quite an interesting topic. Just like you said, the last one, which was water. I think energy also is equally important, and that's why it's listed as one of the priority goals that the global community has to meet. You realize that from 2015, the international community signed up to the Sustainable Development Goals. And like you have indicated, with energy being one of them. And the Sustainable Goal on Energy actually aims for all countries by 2030 to ensure that there's increased access to affordable, clean and reliable and sustainable energy. So it's not just energy, it has to be clean. You know, we have climate change that we are facing, so the cleanness of that energy ensures that the energy sector reduces the greenhouse gas contribution to the global atmosphere. But also sustainable in the sense that we don't want to have disruptive economic activities. So it needs to be sustainable and reliable and affordable, in the sense that we need to have everyone being able to access and be able to connect to energy sources. So this is what the goal itself entails in terms of just breaking it down. And so when countries are looking at establishing or investing in energy, these are the guiding principles that they need to ensure that they incorporate in the investment plans.
Okay, thank you so much. Honorable, we're just recovering from load shedding not too long ago. The country did experience, not only the country, let me just say the region at large, so where we had long hours of load shedding, and this really impacted negatively on the economy. And your ministry, I should say, it's the backbone of the country looking at energy. How are we doing in realizing SDG number 7 as a country?
As a country, I would say not so bad. And despite the challenges, at least there's a bit of investment coming into the energy sector. Looking back, if I may just refer to my statistics that I've got in front of me. In May 2018, there was only 84% of Zambians that were connected to electricity. Okay. Out of these, 75% were in the rural, in the urban areas, and only 8% in the rural areas. So you can imagine that it's a huge task that is ahead of us. But we are doing our best to reduce this number. I should mention here that out of that 1%, 60% are using in rural areas, that is wood fuel, which is quite devastating in terms of this so-called climate change. There's been a lot of deforestation in Zambia. We are losing approximately about 12,000 hectares of land, of forest every year. So that is quite alarming. Okay, so we have also carried out a survey to determine, because looking at 2018, it's been quite a while. So this year we did a survey to establish access to electricity in rural areas. We anticipate that the results will be known by the end of this year, so that we can look at how we can accelerate, or we are on target to achieve the 2030 goal.
Is that attainable, looking at the alarming percentages that you've given us? 8% of the figures that you gave in rural areas have access to electricity. But is universal access to affordable and clean energy by 2030 attainable as a country?
It is attainable as a country.
We only have seven years remaining.
Yes,
Even less than 7
7
years.
years. I appreciate that. See, when you look at the money, the funding to rural electrification that was given to Rural Electrification Authority, I'll just give you the figure so that we don't give false information. In 2022, government allocated RIA 362 million kwacha, and 743 million in 2023. In addition to that, government sort of got some money from CDF. I'm sure Honorable Chonya Aya will agree with me. 1 million from each constituency was dedicated to rural education. We had some resistance from people in town, in urban areas, but that has helped to accelerate rural education, in the sense that there was this additional money, which means last year, which means this year, meaning there was a total of about 700 million kwacha compared to the previous years. So you can imagine, when we came into government, there was only about $20 million that was allocated. Ideally, to achieve the 51% access to electricity in rural areas, we need to, or RIA needs to be given 50% million every year to achieve that. But again, you see, we are talking to cooperative partners like the World Bank. I should mention here that the World Bank has indicated, not yet approved, that they will give about $60 million grant to rural electrification. That money will be used for access to electricity, mainly connection, so that we can, connect more people in the rural areas.
Let's move on to Honorable Chonya, coming from Kafue constituency, which is a very strategic constituency. What projects have you lined up to make sure that your constituency, your 10, realizes goal number 7?
Thank you very much, Paul Sent. Indeed, the situation of electricity access, especially in rural areas, is really I think a difficult issue to deal with, at the moment. Like you heard the minister point out, we are talking about a very small percentage of our rural community accessing, electricity and other forms of energy. But I like his pessimism when he says we are on track on, meeting this target of 51% provision, saying that we are only at 7-8%. However, as Kafue, what we have done recently is that we have signed a memorandum of understanding with the Rural Electrification Authority, where we anticipate, to receive some technical support in terms of costing some of our rural electrification projects in some areas that we have identified which need electricity. Once they've done that costing for us, then we should be able to set aside some funds from our constituency development fund, to implement some of those projects. So in areas like Chifuema here, in fact, a project had already been commenced, but halfway through, there was some stalling, of that project. We are engaging with the other communities, like here in Shantumbu, in a village called Dishiala. Shantumbu is very close, to Lusaka, where we are. It's almost in Lusaka, but we still have villages nearby like that, where settlements have come up, but they still have a challenge, of electricity.
Okay.
We have places like Chanyanya, near the river in Kafue, and towards the river, in the plains towards the river, you don't even have much vegetation for them to rely on even this wood fuel that we are talking about. So they've been, desiring to have, some electricity, projects taken there so that they can use it for their, daily needs.
Not too long ago, RIA organized a symposium here at the National Assembly of Zambia where members of parliament were engaged. They're trying to lobby, like what the minister talked about, 1 million from CDF, so that at least solar or electricity is prioritized in rural constituencies, only in various constituencies. But how have you received that as members of parliament? Have you made that 1 million contribution towards RIA electrifying your constituency? And also, we heard some good news, the minister making some pronouncements where CDF in 2024 has been increased to 30.6 million kwacha.
Yes, the symposium was very important, and in terms of sharing information of what was to be done from the 1 million kwacha. Indeed, initially we were engaged as members of parliament, that we would have to contribute 1 million from our CDF, funding. The understanding was different. And so the symposium, I think, helped to clarify issues. For instance, my own understanding initially was that when we contribute these 1 million kwachas, they would go in a pool where then, RIA would use it to implement projects, you know, in different constituencies at different, you know, cycles.
Okay.
Initially, that's what we understood. But from the meeting, it turned out that this 1 million is supposed to be for this technical support, you know, for RIA to come and do whatever they need to do and guide you on how to implement. So that the actual money for implementation now has to come from the CDF. We are yet to establish, to come up with one fully costed project for us to even appreciate to what extent CDF now will be able to put up, let's say, you know, some grid, you know, power solution. We have no idea.
Okay.
So I think, given that scenario, I would think that government, you know, still has a lot more to try and do in meeting the energy deficit.
All right, so before I move on to ENDP, the number that we are using if you wish to participate on today's program via text messages is 078-772801. That's 0978-772801. Shortly, I'll be able to read those text messages that you are sending in. Better still, like our Facebook page, the National Assembly of Zambia Facebook page, and let us know where you are watching us from today. We are discussing SDG number 7, which is affordable and clean energy. Let me move on to the UNDP. From your agency's perspective, how would you rate Zambia's performance on SDG 7?
And the minister is here.
No, we'll get to the minister. But I want to hear from you as an independent
I don't
entity.
want to rate the government like it's an exam.
No, he's here to defend
because,
himself.
UNDP works with government in
Yes,
partnership.
yes.
As you know, just last year, I think we did sign a UN Sustainable Development Cooperation framework with government. And one of the thematic areas that we work on is energy, supporting government to just build capacities and also enhance investments in ensuring that we meet the SDG 7 targets. In terms of performance, I think government is on course. I wish to agree with the minister. I was looking at the statistics and already showing that we, as a country, we made a jump of about 10% increase in access to electricity. So that is a good record to track. But I think what we need to work with the government hand in hand is to, especially on data collection, we know that when we focus on RIA and ZESCO and what they are doing in terms of enhancing connectivity, is just looking at the bigger brothers of what they are doing in the energy sector. But we have smaller entities that are doing solar installations, mini hydros, which need to be captured and ensure that we count that to how Zambia is performing towards meeting SDG 7. So I would say I won't put a rate in terms of percentage, but the progress is good, and I think we know that in the 7 years we still need to do a bit more and a bit faster so that we meet the SDG 7.
So comparing to other regions or other countries in the sub-Saharan region, how would you rate Zambia?
I wouldn't compare because circumstances are different. You know, when you look at populations, when you compare in the region, you find that Zambia's population different from, say, Namibia.
Are you happy with the allocation in the 2024 national budget towards energy?
I keep looking at government. I think, in my view, what we know, we look at government situation and capacity to be able to allocate resources. Our role is to meet them somewhere. So when we look at the budget, we accept to say this is the capacity that government has, but it dawns on us to say as a development partner, then we need to look at what is the deficit to meet them somewhere halfway or 3/4 of where they need to get.
All right. Yes. Honorable, what strategies is your government putting in place in realizing goal number 7?
Well, I think I'm glad to hear that she has mentioned that they might meet us halfway or full way, whichever way you take it. We are looking at increasing solar grids, which are isolated, especially for rural areas. the goodwill that is coming through is that we could have about 100 mini solar grids maybe by the first quarter of next year, scattered throughout the country. At the end of it all, we are expecting to have about 5,000, okay, solar, in mini grids. Yeah, so that will help in catching up on, so to say, on the lost time.
So you're talking 5,000
yes,
mini solar
yes,
dotted across the country.
Dotted across the country.
Okay.
So once this is actualized, you will see that access to electricity, we could get to maybe 30%,
Okay.
and our target still remains at 7 years, so we'll accelerate a lot of things. And you see, we are trying to bring in this idea of cooperatives. Cooperatives are the ones that will be running these minis, solar grids in rural areas. So it will be a form of employment as well, and it will be independent of, maybe RIA coming to do, repairs and things like that. The community or the cooperative will be able to employ their own accountants, their own engineers, and run these institutions. This is quite popular in the Far East. My ministry and the Rural Education Authority took a trip, a study tour, and found that in the Philippines it is a very successful way of making people have access to electricity, especially in rural areas. These are isolated power plants, so to speak, which will be good, because the cost is less compared to the grid extensions and things like that. So they will be independent from the main grid lines, so that which will also help us export a bit more electricity, because the demand from within the country will be somehow reduced.
Let's read some of the text messages that you've been sending. The number is 0978 772801. We're discussing Sustainable Development Goal number 7, which is affordable and clean energy. The number, once again, that we're using is 0978 772801. My guest on today's program, I do have the Honorable Minister of Energy, that's Honorable Engineer Peter Kapala, MP. And I also have Ms. Carol Zulu, UNDP Environment and Energy Program Specialist. And also we do have Ms. Miriam Chonia Chinyama, who is a Kafue Member of Parliament. You did talk about having 5,000 mini grids, solar powered across these rural areas. But again, the question is connection fee. It's quite high. Once the Rural Electrification Authority has done these extension grids, the solar grids, and they hand over to ZESCO, the amount that these rural dwellers pay is as much as one from urban areas as well. So what are you doing to make sure that this solar that you're providing to rural areas is affordable to rural people?
Well, to start with, electricity is a very expensive commodity to purchase or to produce. However, we as government have come up with ideas on how we can mitigate the cost of access to electricity by way of connections in rural areas. The ERB, the regulator, is working on some formula that I hope we could implement next year, whereby the category will be segregated between urban and rural areas. Not only that, we have come up with let's call it part of the solution, whereby connections, 70% of the connections are paid by the consumer, and 30% is carried by ZESCO for connection charges. However, to sort of facilitate more connections, a customer, when they pay 50%, they will be connected, speedily. I mean, within a month. That is the idea that we're working on, so that then the balance can be recovered or paid through the monthly bills that will be generated, so that within 2 years or so, the connection fee would have been paid, and you revert back to normal, tariffs that you are using.
Okay.
So that
Right.
is one of the ways that we are looking at.
All right, Honorable Chonya, maybe would want to respond. Good news, 5,000 mini grid across rural constituents, and I'm sure your constituents will be one of the beneficiaries. Your reaction to the minister's
I
sentiment?
should indeed believe that Kafiwe will be one of the beneficiaries to those mini grids. It would be nice, to have that. But it would be interesting also to hear. Well, there is the partnership between government and our cooperating partners, but I would have been interested to hear, how, the ministry financially would be able to meet some of those plans, because looking at you asked a question about the budgetary allocation for 2024. In 2022, yes, we were around 300, thousand, and we had a good jump to 758,000, somewhere there, in terms of budgetary allocation. But for 2024, we have actually, gone down to
Yes.
400
Yes.
something.
Yeah.
So I think it would be important for the minister to try and have us understand, why there has been this decline, and then how we hope to meet these, targets, and implement the electrification programs if the financing has actually, reduced. The aspect of funding, is quite, critical to any programming, and we do appreciate that there is a competition of resources, but we are here discussing the importance of electricity as a very key, economic driver, so to say, so that, we would have been expecting a lot more, investment, to go in there in order to just inject some economic, life into our country, if you like, through a lot of these activities, that require electricity.
Okay.
So I would appreciate that, but otherwise we are also trying to partner. Recently here at Parliament, we had a solar energy provider come to, display some of their merchandise, that can make use of solar energy, and among those things were even, barbing machines, which I found so interesting, for use by our youths in the rural communities. We are now talking about youth empowerment, formation of cooperatives, so I found these barbing machines that use solar energy, and they had some small solar packages, quite interesting.
Okay.
Of course, they had, other things like, the fridges that would be used in a rural, setup, and so many things. So we are looking out, for what the market has to offer.
But as a member of parliament, have you initiated ideas where you follow these organizations? I'm sure there are a lot in the central business of Lusaka and outside Lusaka, where you can engage them and sensitize your people in your constituency, and also lobby through the communities to prioritize issues to do with solar. So at least using CDF, you'll be able to purchase this equipment approved by yourself and the local authority in your constituency.
Yes, we are interacting with some of these providers. I can't immediately recall the name of one of these providers who are actually in the multi-facility economic zone, and they've been able to put up some few solar installations within our constituency. Right now we are also grappling with another situation that has turned out a bit more complicated, so to say, where there's this prospective solar provider who is trying to set up a plant in the Chanyanya area, you know, of our constituency.
Okay.
But, you know, some conflict there has arisen with the local community who are not quite happy. According to them, you know, this investment is trying to take away their grazing land.
Yeah.
And so it's taking, you know, effort and sensitization on our part to see how we can strike a balance between providing the energy needs, you know, for that community, as well as, you know, sustaining the economic activity of cattle rearing, you know, for that community.
All right.
Yes.
Let's read some of the text messages that you've sent. The number is 0978 772801. Let's see some of the text messages. And the first one reads, good morning, Minister of Energy and Member of Parliament. Thank you. We do not have load shedding. Faith from Kapirimposhi. That's kudos they are going to the minister, saying there's no load shedding in Kapirimposhi. Good morning, Honorable Chonya, and when will Shantumbu have power? Yvonne from Shantumbu. That's your prospective voter there coming from Shantumbu, asking you when that area will be connected. Maybe you would want to respond before I move to UNDP.
The area that I mentioned
Maybe
is
let me speak with the minister. I think is the right person.
She knows better. She wants to whether there is power there.
All right, let's then once you come in, then the minister will respond.
Yes,
before we move on
yeah,
to UNDP.
but if she followed the program from the beginning, I did mention about, you know, the engagements that we are trying to have, you know, with RIA, with ZESCO, you know, on providing electricity to some of these areas. And one of the places, Shiala, that I mentioned is actually in Shantumbu. But I know that because Shantumbu is a developing area, you know, there are a lot of other places actually that need electricity.
Okay.
It's the new Lusaka now is expanding from Shantumbu, Honorable Minister.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunity there, even for ZESCO, you know, to capture new customers once, you know, they put up, you know, these installations. And we just hope that they can, you know, be faster in doing that.
All right, let's quickly move on because we don't have enough time. We do have a live committee coming at 9:30 there. Let me move on to Ms. Zulu. Now, Sustainable Development Goal number 7 is about ensuring access to affordable and clean energy, which is key to the development of any country. We're talking of issues to do with agriculture, business, communications, education, healthcare, and transportation. What does this mean to the developmental agenda of this country?
Yeah. No, that's very right, and I think the Honourable Member of Parliament also touched on the importance of access to energy, supporting microeconomies. I think if you just visualize electricity coming to a community, you can contemplate and see how much economic activities would just arise out of there. You know, small scale enterprises that utilize electricity will start mushrooming. And this is where we have interest to say we can look at the bigger picture of the country and how much accessible the population is to electricity. But of interest is at the local levels, because that's why we have a bigger population that is not connected to electricity. And that's where you want to take development. If you look at setups of our local communities, we realize that we have social services like schools, health centers, and also just other economic facilities, which require electricity on a reliable and sustainable supply basis. So what this implies is that when you connect, for example, healthcare facilities to stable and reliable, but also clean energy, you improve the healthcare services in that community, but also you ensure that the outlying communities will benefit from that connectivity, because the electricity won't just, you know, drop at the healthcare center. And here I can also touch on what UNDP is already doing in the pipeline. We are collaborating across the region with 5 other countries to develop a project called Solar for Health. This is mainly to ensure that rural health centers in Zambia and other countries' health centers that are not connected on the grid can be connected to solar, so that you have that stable supply, but of cleaner energy. So this is a pipeline project that we are doing to target the Green Climate Fund. As you know, at international level, there's that fund that addresses climate change. And when it comes to education, you know, connectivity cannot be overemphasized, because you realize that the moment you connect education facilities, you increase teachers' ability to prepare material, but also the students are able to study more, they study longer, because then they can have access even to internet, because electricity is available. So some of those elements may be seen at local level, because then you can directly impact on population that are not connected to the grid.
All right. Honorable, for quite some time, Zambia has depended on hydropower. What programs have you put in place to promote other sources of energy as the Zambian government in realizing goal number 7?
You see, to start with, we are trying to ramp up solar power generation, and we've signed some MOUs with companies that will bring in close to about 4,000 megawatt in terms of solar power generation. So that is quite an increase to moving away from dependence of hydro. However, hydro still remains the major supply of electricity in our country. When you look at the rainfall pattern, you notice that rainfall has moved away from the southern part of our country to the northern part of the country. The northern part of our country receives adequate rainfall for good hydropower generation, and 70% or 80% of our hydropower plants are located in the southern part of our country, which is prone to drought, so to speak. So we are now moving into what we call the northern circuit. We would like to develop Kalungwishi, which will bring in something close to 247 megawatts. Rwapura River, the estimated capacity is about 1,000 if all the sites were developed. We are also looking at geothermal. Geothermal is also one source of energy that is what they call base, that will provide base load, and in total the estimate is also estimated to be at 1,000 megawatts. So once we develop this, we should be able to be self-sufficient and not worry much about hydro power generation. So the solar power itself should be adequate, because currently we've got installed capacity which is more than the demand. That's why at times we export to other countries, but we want to ramp up so that we can make Zambia a hub of power generation.
On the floor of the House, we've had questions to do with wind energy. Any prospects of
yes, sorry, I forgot to mention that. There's a project which is quite advanced coming up in Masaiti. It's called Upepo, that should be generating close to 200 megawatts, and another one in Katete, because Zambia is like split in half. The eastern side is where you get better wind speed compared to the western half of our country. So there are two potential projects that should start within the next 2 years, wind powered.
All right, as we conclude, I'll start with Honorable Chonya. I know we do have a live committee coming at 09:30. We don't have enough time. What are you doing to make sure that Zambia realizes goal number 7, which is affordable and clean energy, before or exactly by 2030 as Kafue constituency?
I think, for me, let me take advantage of the little time instead to, just talk about, the need for more sensitization on this concept of clean cooking, smart cooking, finding ways, in which we can use, less power, so to say, for our cooking, because by so doing, we'll be, mitigating against, a lot of issues. We talked about the challenge of deforestation here, arising from our people using, charcoal and other woody vegetation. So I would want to appeal to partners, such as UPND and other players. Recently, we had an interaction with USID. We are looking at, expanding, this concept of cleaner cooking as a good strategy at the household level to manage energy consumption.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
All right. As UNDP, maybe the question would be, what would be the consequences to the lack of access to energy as a country?
What would be the consequences would be, I think if you look at it in two contexts. One is that, like I touched on, the microeconomy remains undeveloped. So we are looking at areas that already have productive activities happening. You talked about agriculture production. When you have electricity connected to a farming community, or even just in a village where they have enough supply, you can introduce refrigeration. So there is that aspect of reducing post-harvest losses, because people can store food longer and be able to improve food security even at household level. So without access, then you have a wastage of a lot of food that otherwise could have been preserved for future use and for communities' nutrition. The other aspect is also on economic activities. We are mindful that at the local level, those small micro enterprises, they actually contribute to our macroeconomy at national level. So when we support communities that are doing economic activities with electricity, we then know that we are supporting microeconomies, and ultimately the goal is that the macroeconomy at country level is going to improve. But we talked about education and health as well. Those are critical sectors. Without access to energy, especially electricity itself, we know that the healthcare system wouldn't thrive. We know there are critical operations that have to be done in healthcare centers, and without electricity, this is where you find life is lost just because there was no electricity supply at that moment. Education, pupils have to study, they have to have access to internet, to information, ICT. Those things have to be supported by a supply of energy. So the consequences are really grave, and this is why as a cooperating partner, we take this very seriously in working with government. And what we are working, we've been in touch, for example, with the Department of Energy to look at what are the priorities in the strategic action plan, to look at, ensure that the strategic environment is made suitable for investments. So we are supporting the ministry to just ensure that we do that and lay the foundation for investments.
Engineer, your concluding remarks regarding SDG number 7 and your assurance to the country. I know why is on you.
Government assurances. Yeah. The new Dawn government has recognized that the Ministry of Energy is the engine for development, cross-cutting in all sectors of our economy. That is why a lot of effort has been put into the Ministry of Energy, and to ensure that the plans that we've set to achieve the target of 51% access, especially for rural electrification, since this is a major topic, so that we can bring development, evenly in all areas. It is something that I can say is achievable, and we plan to achieve it. 7 years, yes, sounds a short time, but the plans that we've got, and with goodwill that is coming through from our cooperating partners, we will achieve and maybe even go beyond the 51% to 60%.
All right, Mase, thank you so much for sparing some time just to appear on this program. We really appreciate it as Parliament Radio and Television.
Thank you so much.
Madam Caro, thank you so much as UNDP for making yourself available on this platform as well. Not forgetting Honorable Chonia, we're really humbled as Parliament Radio and Television.
You're welcome.
There you have it. We looked at SDG number 7, which is affordable and clean energy We just hope and trust you've enjoyed today's presentation of the SDG and You program. Remember, this program is in partnership with the United Nations. My name is Posen Tendovi. Join us next week as we look at yet another interesting goal under the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. On behalf of the entire production crew, it's bye for now.
You can now advertise on Parliament Television and Parliament Radio.